So, hello guys and welcome back. It's been a while and sorry for that. So, I had a lot of requests for hip internal rotation and thought we'd just look at that today and give you some options and some stuff to try and maybe some unconventional stuff as well that might help. But the first thing we want to know about any range of motion is if we are lacking a range of motion, it generally means we habitually do not use that range of motion. So I'm going to let you guys think on that for a second. We could, go through everything in our day-to-day life. We can go, how do you sit? Do you sit in the normal, what is it called, man-spreading posture, where you're in external rotation? Do you do that 8 hours a day? Maybe something to think about. But we're going to just look at some quick assessments for internal rotation. Let's move Lisa to the side. So I've got Lisa here. We're just going to look at some other stuff that might just show the connections in the body. So first things first, to assess internal rotation, we have to figure out, is it a muscular issue or is it the capsule itself is tight, or does the femur not rotate nicely in the capsule? So this would be our test for a muscular issue now. And then it would be better if it was free floating up higher, but it doesn't matter for a moment. So we need about 40 degrees. 30 degrees is good, 40 degrees is better. 45 superior. Lisa has very good hip internal rotation, so you're going to see a lot of it today, but we want to watch out for a couple of things. So you can get a friend of yours to do this for you and you can do it on them. You can track each other. So you've got to remember, first things first, 30 degrees visually isn't a lot. So if you think of your set square from school or those triangles, just to get a visual image of it, it's, if you think this is 90 degrees, it's a third of that range. So just bear that in mind. So to perform this, I'll put a hand on the knee just to brace it. Now I'm just going to lift and rotate. As you can see, it's got about 45 degrees here, which is excellent. Now the thing to watch out for is people will compensate. This is why internal rotation corresponds with back pain for a lot of people. Is if we didn't have internal rotation, let me just demo this, the first thing that would happen was the hip will hitch up, the person will go to the side and compensate for the QL to try to lift the hip. So watch out when you're doing this test. You go as far as you can, and then if you go any further, you begin to see the pelvis rise. So that's our first test. Now, Lisa, could you just lie down on the floor? So there's a couple of tests. I'm going to show you the one you can do yourself. So your self-test is just trying to rotate the femur in the capsule itself. So I'm just going to put our foot up and then just try to twist the leg around. And you can see, just watch out for the ankle. Once again, imagine if you had a stick pointing out of the knee, it should come in about 30 to 40 degrees. Now, we can do this with a partner, so Lisa, if you flip over. I like this test actually myself because it shows us symmetry and asymmetry, is that if we bring the leg up, and then we bend it at 90 degrees, we just drop it out, we see how far it goes. As you can see, she's got a greater amount of internal rotation. Back up. Now, to compare side to side, we'll put the feet together, put the knees together, and then we'll just drop out and we'll see, is there a major difference side to side? You see this quite commonly that one person can internally rotate on one side and then can't on the other. That would generally be a lot of back pain caused from that, or a lot of just general pain, knee pain as well. So it's just once again, both legs together, aiming for about 40 degrees. Cool, now Lisa, stand up. Now there's a thing that doesn't really get talked about a lot, so if you just face backwards to the camera, that in internal rotation, if we're thinking in a global body, so we can think joint specific, which we just showed, but we can also think, what is the spirals on the back? If we think of the direction of the fibers of the lats, they come down this direction, they attach onto the thoracolumbar fascia here, and then the piriformis will begin on the lumbar spine, the first 3 to 5 vertebrae, depending on your body type, of the lumbar spine, and it will continue to spiral down. So when we're thinking this, you'll see this in the exercise later, that we want this whole rotation to start from here. Now this is internal metaphor and visualization, but we're not trying to just turn the leg. If we just try and force the leg in, that's when we get that medial knee sensation, that valgus stress. We want to avoid that. We want to think we're starting right up here at the sacrum, the lumbar spine, and that whole, just turn the side on, and the whole spiral is coming down this way, and that's what's turning in, if that makes sense. And you can just try that yourself just by trying to turn the leg in the socket, externally rotate, internally rotate, try push out through the knee as you pull in. So it's just to give you an idea of how it relates to the rest of the body, if we think in terms of flow of tissue from one point to the other versus just looking at the joint specific. So we've got a couple of exercises coming up. Check them out, try them out. I think they're quite effective for internal rotation when cued the way I use them. And let me know how you get on. Thank you, Rich. So, what we're going to look at here is what I think is a regression on the 1990 stretches that some people will be familiar with, in that most people don't have enough actual activation and control of the femur in internal rotation to achieve that stretch correctly without defaulting into the lower back. So I'm going to show this is a knee-to-knee stretch. For the ladies watching, just due to hip shape and cue angle, this stretch will probably be ineffective for you, but we're going to have the lovely Lisa demonstrate it anyway. So, to achieve this stretch, and the most important thing is the cueing. So Lisa's going to bend her knees up and put her feet on the floor. Now take her feet out slightly, about armpit distance. Now this is the important bit. So a lot of people when doing this stretch, they'll just drop the knees in towards the middle. And this is incorrect. It will basically put a lot of strain on the medial knee by just dropping straight in. So what you want to do is thinking of this spiral starting from the lower back and pulling around. So you're going to actively pull the femurs into rotation, at the same time reaching out the knees in this direction. Now, don't lose your core, keep your core roughly braced, and pull the knees together. Now, if you feel a stress on the medial knee, you're pulling a bit too hard, or you're not pulling you're not twisting the femur itself. So for this, with release, for this, because it's an active stretch, you're pulling in, I generally like to do sets of maybe 3 to 4 sets of 5 repetitions. Now a repetition for me would be 10 seconds, pull as you hard, so pull in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then hold the position, relax for 5, breathe, make sure breathing is always steady, and then pull harder, then relax, and repeat that. So 5 repetitions. Takes about 1 minute 15 to go through a set. Take a break, 1-to-1 rest, and then repeat. So in this exercise we're going to look at how the femur rotates in the hip capsule itself without trying to put too much muscles on the stretch. Now you're going to need a band. I've got a TheraBand here, quite a light one. It can be done with a normal floss band, a normal jump stretch band. It doesn't have to be a TheraBand, but I'll demo it with this. So I'm going to make a little stirrup for my foot. The band comes around the inside. I'm going to make a spiral a couple of times around. Now I'm going to come down till I'm out of any feeling stretch. Now using the band's assistance, I'm just going to try turn the foot in. When I reach the end, I'm going to actively externally rotate the foot and then pull it back in. Externally rotate, let the band pull it back in. Then we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side, where I'll spiral the band the other way. Now I'll pull to external rotation. Now with the miniature, we're going to adjust the resistance obviously with pulling on the band or relaxing. We're going to try externally rotate without resistance. Now the one thing to watch out for while you're doing this is if you feel the hip and the ribs begin to come together, it means you're defaulting into the QL to get that internal rotation. So when you feel that, that's your cue just to back it up and just work within the range you can effectively internally rotate on. So for the third exercise I like to use to help with internal rotation is, it's an exercise I learned from a martial art called Baguazhang, and it's a warm-up exercise they use. And if you know anything about Baguazhang, a lot of it is involved moving in a circle and spiral paths, and a lot of twisting, internal rotation, external rotation of the hips. So they use this exercise to warm up a lot. I think it's really great just in terms of developing external rotation and just figuring out where all those connections in the body come from. So It's called a pigeon toe stance, and we're going to add some twists on. First things first, get the stance right. So your feet about hip width, armpit distance. You're going to have to play with this and find what works for you. Then we're going to turn the legs in. And this is where the rotation gets quite interesting, because we can go quite far, and the further you go, you'll feel that it begins to wind up the medial knee. Now, we don't want that. We want to come back out to a point where it doesn't. Shift the heels out slightly. Find that bit. Then, this is where the internal rotation. So this is like a super active version of the lying stretch we just done, where we're going to sit down slightly with the pelvis tucked, at the same time pull the knees in. So you see this is making me go pigeon-toed. Now it looks like I'm going into valgus, because you know the valgus is when the knee goes into the medial. But because I'm pushing out the side of my heels at the same time pulling in, I don't get a feeling on the inside of the knee, so that means I'm doing it correctly. So once we can hold this posture, maybe a minute, we can start with 30 seconds. A minute, a couple of minutes is a good time to aim for, but start gentle and work your way up. You begin to feel, it'll also begin to shake a bit with the muscles working against each other. Then, if this is a nice position, we can begin to add to the difficulty. So we'll take our hands, we're going to hold them about chest level, around the heart, around the chest. You'll feel that there's a nice point, depending on your frame. I'm going to sit back, and I'm going to keep my head following my hands. I'm going to initiate twisting around the femur, what comes up the spine. You see I'm moving into external rotation on one leg and internal rotation on the other. If I lose that pull in and push out, that expansion and contraction, at the same time you'll feel it immediately default into the knees. So this is quite good for just learning what is actual internal rotation. You can take that quite far, and you can also bring it up into a spinal mobility drill, but it's not what we're doing today. So this one, first just get the stance right, play with it, be able to hold it for a minute or two. Once you've got that, and you're not feeling too much of a strain, or any strain at all I should say, on the knees, you want to feel that like external rotation happening. Then you can try the twists just to begin to mobilize it a bit further.